Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the 1001 Movies podcast, inspired by the book 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. This time we'll be talking about the 1903 groundbreaking silent classic, The Great Train Robbery, directed by Edwin S. Porter. It would be silly discussing the merits of the plot of The Great Train Robbery. At a running time of about 10.5 minutes, the film's title practically spoils the plot for you. What you have to know to understand why the film is so important, however, comes before and after it was made. By 1903, audiences went to Nickelodeons to watch films depicting otherwise banal scenes, such as people boarding a subway, exiting a factory, or dancing to music. Pioneer George Melies enchanted audiences the year before with A Trip to the Moon, using editing and camera tricks to make his actors disappear before your very eyes. Not to mention enchanting the viewer with fantastic visuals via set design and costumes. The Great Train Robbery deserves recognition not for being the first film, obviously, not even being the first Western. That honor goes to Cripple Creek barroom scene from 1899, but for being the first American film with a narrative. Rather than just show people short films of daily life, Edwin S. Porter used editing to tell a story, a fact which may seem just too simplistic to be appreciated by today's audiences. Porter began working for the Edison Company in 1899 as a mechanical engineer, during which time his work had him traveling across the globe. He was eventually promoted to manage Edison's film's New York studios, which gave him access to a plethora of camera equipment, as well as complete creative control. Now remember, this wasn't the Hollywood of later years, and despite his resources, Porter likely didn't have a large crew behind him. Porter sat down to create a film that involved a small number of characters with just a pinch of foundation for each of them, several different locations, and a story that actually had a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the film's opening, we see one of the robbers tie up the station master, then board the locomotive when it stops for fueling. They beat up one of the engineers, throw him from the train, and hijack the locomotive, separating it from the rest of the train. Held at gunpoint, passengers are escorted off the train, one of which is shot in the back, and the robbers escape via the locomotive with their ill-gotten gains. They escape into the woods on horseback, and are later chased down and shot by a posse. The film concludes with a shot of one of the robbers looking straight into the camera and shooting at the audience. This shot obviously serves no narrative purpose, but Porter meant it to remind audiences that they weren't just watching a story unfold on the big screen, but they were involved in it. Now, depending on where you saw the film, the shot was placed either in the beginning or at the end, although most existing copies apparently have it at the film's end. Porter also broke barriers with one of the first, if not the first, uses of a matte shot. In the station master's office, he used a matte shot to create the three-dimensional illusion of a train passing by the window outside. Even this was revolutionary compared to the work of George Melies, using techniques with multiple cameras rather than magic tricks using editing. It gave the impression that action was occurring simultaneously on several different layers within the film's set. Porter's masterful use of storytelling via editing drew long lines around the block at Nickelodeons. Edison's agents bragged that the film was absolutely the superior of any moving picture ever made, and a faithful imitation of the genuine hold-ups made famous by various outlaw bands in the far west. Never before had word of mouth resulted in such high demand to see a movie. There were rumors, none of them confirmed to this day, of audience members fainting in the aisles or running in terror from theaters. This sort of isn't surprising, since the film has 2 on-screen deaths that seem pretty brutal by 1903 standards. One man is beaten severely and then thrown from a moving train, and another is shot in the back before he falls tragically to the ground, his fellow passengers watching helplessly. The Great Train Robbery was the movie to see of the early 1900s, and dozens of imitations sprang up in the years that followed. As a result, the Western became the first American movie genre. Gilbert M. Anderson, who played multiple roles in the Great Train Robbery, including the aforementioned unfortunate train passenger who was shot in the back, would go on to write and direct his own Westerns, and would later co-found the S&A Film Manufacturing Company in 1907. He later became known as Broncho Billy Anderson. Edwin S. Porter also made Life of an American Fireman in 1903, which broke boundaries by using jump cuts and moving the camera to different places within the same set to effectively tell a story. He continued making westerns in his New Jersey studio through 1910. Porter's work undoubtedly inspired D.W. Griffith, who would become the greatest silent filmmaker of all time and one of Hollywood's first iconic directors. His epic Birth of a Nation would be the next greatest film 12 years later. Later editions of The Great Train Robbery would include various soundtracks and color tinting which would change with events in the film. When there would be an explosion or gunshot, for instance, the film stock would go from a drab green to a shocking red, reflecting no doubt the surprise in audiences' imaginations. Some prints include the sound of gunshots, which would undoubtedly have frightened viewers to death in 1903, but watching the original version without the tinting or sound effects remains the best way to see the movie for film purists. Today, the film remains a novelty, and viewings can be seen with live organ music at revival film festivals. This is, in fact, how I first saw it many years ago. In his 2011 documentary, The Story of Film, an Odyssey, filmmaker Mark Cousins credits the closing shot of Martin Scorsese's 1990 film Goodfellas as a direct homage to the closing shot of The Great Train Robbery. Whether or not that is true is unknown, but remnants of the film's inspiration still linger 112 years later. That's all I have to say about The Great Train Robbery, but tune in next time when we talk about Babe, Chris Noonan's 1995 tale about a talking pig. In the meantime, feel free to email me at 1001moviespodcast@gmail.com, follow me on Twitter at 1001moviespc, and like the podcast on Facebook. Until next time, happy viewing.